Okay. And here. And we're going to go. So there's an acronym that helps us remember what is positive and what is negative within each quadrant. And that acronym is a SMART Trig class. Okay? So I'm going to put this up here for a second. But what I want you to write is that in quadrant 1, everything is positive. So we're going to fill this in. But, well, you can actually fill it in. So on your unit circle where it says positive and negative in quadrant 1, in quadrant 1, all 6 are positive. So you're going to say all and none. So for quadrant 1, what's positive is all. All 6 trig ratios are positive. And none are negative in quadrant 1. So that's the only one where they're all positive and none are negative. And then when we rotate, so it says a SMART, so S is for SMART, which represents sign. So in quadrant 2, what's positive is going to be sign. And then what's the sister to sign? Cosecant. So that's what's positive. Sine and cosecant are positive. What's negative, what I want you to write for negative, is going to be cosine and secant. So this doesn't list the sisters, but I'll list the sisters. So secant, tangent, and cotangent. So go ahead and fill that in for quadrant 2. So where it says positive, the only 2 that are positive are cosecant and sine. And then these 4 are negative. And this is important too because we're going to also figure out which quadrant we're in, and we're going to use that. We're going to use clues based off of the sign of the trig ratio. Okay, and then when we get down to quadrant 3, what's positive is tangent and cotangent. So for positive, I want you to write tangent and cotangent. That's positive. So the things in green are positive, and the things written, the ratios written in red are negative. So negative would be sine, cosecant, cosine, and secant. I can't hear you. Quadrant 3. So this is quadrant 3. So what's positive? So the ones written in green. So tangent and cotangent are positive. Because remember, tangent and cotangent, we find that by dividing. Okay? And because sine and cosine are both negative, when we divide it, we get a positive tangent. Okay, so negative would be cosecant, sine, secant, cosine. And positive are the ones I have written in green, cotangent and tangent. For quadrant 4, the only thing that is positive is cosine, and the sister to cosine, which is secant. So that's what you're going to write for positive. For quadrant 4, you have cosine and secant. Negative, you have sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. So again, this acronym, I guess, just kind of helps you remember what's positive, because you rotate counterclockwise and you start with A, so that stands for all. And then in quadrant 2, S is for sign. Sign is positive. And it's always the sister goes with it. T, tangent and the sister, that's in quadrant 3. And C, cosine and the sister. All right, so now you officially have your full unit circle. Now, last year when I did the unit circle, I made them fill out positive and negatives in that 3 minutes. But I'm not gonna do that this year because I really want you to just focus on having all of your angles in radians and in degrees, and then your X and Y values, okay? So that's what I really want you to focus on. All right, any questions about that? Okay, go ahead and copy down example 1. So we have theta, and these are not angles on the unit circle. So we don't know what theta is. We don't know what the measure of the angle is. We know the sine and the cosine though. And the first thing we need to figure out is what quadrant we're in. So what quadrant do you think we are in? Are we in quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? Let's look at our answers. Is this positive or negative, this fraction here? Positive. And what about this one? So what's the only quadrant where sine and cosine are positive? Quadrant what? 1. So we know we're in quadrant 1, which means that they're all of my answers should be positive. And that's the first thing you want to establish, is what quadrant we're in. So we're in quadrant 1. Because sine and cosine are only positive. They're only both positive in quadrant 1. So the easiest to find would be the sisters. So let's go ahead and find the sisters. So let's find cosecant. So we're going to find cosecant. How are we going to find cosecant? What are we going to do with the sine? Flip it. So let's take the sine and flip it, which becomes 5 over root 5. And now let's rationalize that, because we have a radical in our denominator. We're going to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 5. So on the top, I have 5 root 5 over the square root of 25, which becomes, I'm showing all of the steps, 5 root 5 over 5. Now these can cancel, because 5 divided by 5 is going to give you just a 1. So we just get the square root of 5. So the cosecant of theta is equal to the square root of 5. So now let's go ahead and do secant. So for secant, we're going to flip cosine. And again, we have a square root in our denominator. So we have 5 root 5, and this is going to end up being a 2 times just a 5, because the square root of 25 is going to be 5. So that would be 5 root 5 over 10. And this time, this reduces, 5 over 10 reduces to what? 1/2, yep. So we have 1 root 5 over 2. Okay. Now let's find tangent. So when we find our tangent, that's when we have to take sine and divide that by cosine. That's the definition of tangent. So I'm going to take my sine, which is root 5 over 5, and divide that by cosine, which is 2 root 5 over 5. So tangent and cotangent, they take a little bit more work because we have to do our keep, change, flip. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this one actually kind of works out pretty nicely because we can cancel out the square root of 5s. And we can also cancel out the 5s. So what do you think my final answer is going to be? So what's left in the numerator? A 1. Yep, so it'll be a 1 over 2. So we can't just have a 2 in the denominator. We got to have a numerator, and the numerator is 1. So the tangent is equal to 1/2. Okay, let's do the cotangent, which in all fairness, cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So if I know tangent is 1/2, then I know cotangent is 2. You could also do cosine divided by sine. But in this example, we're going to just end up with 2. And all 4 answers are positive because we are in quadrant 1. Any questions about how we work through that example? Okay, let's do another one. So take a minute and see if you can do this one by yourself. So now the sine is 1/3 and the cosine is 2 root 2 over 3. And we need to find all 6. Or the remaining 4. They gave us 2, we need to find the other 4. What quadrant do you think we're in? Back in 1, yeah. So quadrant 1 is the easiest one to do. So quadrant 1 again, so they're all going to be positive. So take a few moments, try to work through these, finding these 4, and then we'll go through them together. Okay, who has 4 answers? All right, let's go through them together. All right, so cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so that one's pretty easy. So when we flip 1 over 3, we just get 3. And then for our secant, we have 3 over 2 root 2. And we're going to multiply that top and bottom by root 2. So that gives you 3 root 2. And then this becomes a 2 times square root of 4, which is just 2. So we get 3 root 2 over 4. So that would be secant. Tangent is sine over cosine. So that would be 1/3 divided by 2 root 2 over 3, which we have to do our keep change flip. So that becomes 3 over 2 root 2. So we got some stuff we can cancel. We can cancel out the 3. So we have 1/2 times 2 root 2. Multiply it top and bottom by the square root of 2. And did you get 1/4? 1 over 4? Who had that? Okay, good. And then once we know tangent, cotangent is pretty simple. I guess I'm cheating by not actually doing cosine divided by sine. Yes. Thank you. I'm so glad I have somebody in here paying attention. You are completely right, Imani. It should be root 2 over 4. Sorry, guys. It's root 2 over 4. Okay, hold on. Let me fix that. Okay, because in the top we have 1 times 2, which is just going to be root 2. And in our denominator, we have a 4. There we go. Now we good. Yes, Val.
I reduced it to.
You reduced it to 1. Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, and that's actually very common. So the reason why we cannot reduce it to 1/2 is because this has a square root above it. So the square root of 2, you can't reduce this fraction because that 2 is underneath a square root. So we cannot reduce it. Now, if there was a number in front of the square root, like we had in some other examples, then we can reduce. But a number underneath a square root, we cannot reduce that. Okay, so our cotangent, I'm actually going to do it the long way, though. Let me just do it the long way, just to verify that what we get is what we should get. So cotangent is cosine divided by sine. So cosine would be 2 root 2 over 3. We're going to divide that by 1/3. So we're going to do our keep, change, flip. The 3's cancel, and you end up with just 2 root 2. So if we had flipped our cotangent, we would have had 4 over root 2, and we would have needed to rationalize it, which we would still get 2 root 2. But, yeah. Okay, any questions about how we work through that? Just so that we're ahead tomorrow, I want you to go ahead and copy down this example. We're not going to work through it today, but go ahead and copy it down so that we're ready for tomorrow. And you can, now this one doesn't have any radicals, so it should go pretty fast. The first thing we need to figure out, though, is what quadrant we're in. So what quadrant has a negative sign? Show me with your fingers. A negative sign and a positive cosine. 4. And that's really important. So we're going to be in quadrant 4. All right.